G'day guys and welcome back to the channel. So a couple of weeks ago I released a video on how to do a thorough clean of your 4x4 after a trip or just one of those big annual cleans where you take all the wheels off and do a really good clean. So have a quick look at some of the results I got from that. Now coming back to the car, what you can't see from those images is all the scratches and pinstripes, as we call them, from all the close branches on those narrow 4x4 tracks. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I go about removing all those scratches and making your car look really good. So this particular vehicle is not in such great condition after some of the four-wheel drive tracks we've been doing recently. So let's have a quick look with the camera up nice and close and see what we're working with today. Okay guys, so there you go. I've tried to get some images there of the car. There are a few scratches from tracks, but there are a lot of pinstripes and light scratches on the clear coat just from those narrow tracks. And so today we're going to be trying to get rid of them using all these products here, or at least a lot of them anyway. So the first thing we're going to start with today is a clay bar. So I've got myself a clay bar here, and all that is just literally a bar of clay that you rub against the paint using some sort of clay lube. Now I'm using a product called Clay Lube by Gion. So like I've mentioned in my previous videos, I'm not brand loyal, I'm not sponsored, and I haven't received any commission for using any of these products. These are just the products I find that work really well, and hence why I've stuck with them. So the clay lube there is just going to get rid of any contaminants that are stuck in the paint that a normal paint wash can't do. Once we've done that, we're then going to move on to a cut and polish. So you're going to be wanting to use a random orbital buffer for that. You can do it by hand, but a buffer or a polisher is going to make it a lot easier. So I've got a couple here. The bottom one here is just a real cheap one that I bought from Super Cheap Auto. That's lasted about 6 years and it's done the job quite well, and it's done many of cars. However, at the end of 6 years now, it's starting to come to the end of its life and it's not working like it should. So I've got this new one here from Distill. This is the DT8. It has an 8mm throw, which means it moves 8mm side to side while rotating. When you're buying a random orbital polisher, one thing you want to look for, a couple of things you want to look for, is you want to make sure it's got a selectable speed setting, just so you can use it for different applications at different strengths. You also want to make sure it's got a reasonable length cord. So this is when you're working on higher sections, like at the top of your car, the roof, all these bars here. You can chuck the cable over your back so it doesn't hit and scratch the paintwork down below, and you're not going to have a plug bouncing off your back. You also want to make sure it's got a nice comfortable grip so that you can easily apply pressure or lighten it as required. So this one here should make our life a lot easier today. Now in terms of pads, I've got a couple here. I've got a couple of heavy cut pads. I'm not sure whether I'll be using them today. We'll just see how well a regular cut pad goes, which is this red one here. I'll be using that with the Meguiar's Ultimate Compounds. So I found this to be one of the best compounds for just taking that real thin layer of clear coat off and taking your car back to a nice shiny flat finish. Once we've done that, we'll be moving on to a polish. Still using the random orbital polisher here. We're using a polish pad, and we're using that with the Meguiar's Ultimate Polish as well. That's just really going to give it that nice deep shine and sparkle at the end of it. Now once we've done that, we're then going to use a product called Gion Prep. So this product here is designed to remove all oil and contaminants left behind by the polishers and take the paint back to a nice, clean, untouched finish. So it's going to give us a nice dry clear coat to work on, and then it's a matter of applying some sort of protective coat to the car. Now I've got a couple of protective coats here. So one that I used to use is the Meguiar's Ultimate Wax. This is a really nice wax, and it does give the car that really deep shine. But what I have been using recently are a sort of hybrid ceramic spray coating. So it's by no means a professional ceramic coat or anything like that, but it is just sort of like a basic ceramic coat. It's a little bit tougher than a wax. It's going to be a little more chemical resistant. It's going to last a little bit longer, and it's again just going to give that car that real deep shine and hold it there for longer. So I've got a couple here. I've got one called the Turtle Wax Ice Seal and Shine. Now I had to import that from the US. Unfortunately, Turtle Wax haven't released that in Australia yet. And I've also got the Mother CMX, so that could just be purchased from Super Cheap Auto. So this is the one I'm going to be using today. It's a mix of silicon and titanium dioxides. There's a particular way to apply it, we'll go over that when we get to it, but a really good coating there. Now to apply that coating, we're going to be using just microfiber applicator pads, some nice clean ones there. And obviously on hand during this process, you're going to want a lot of microfiber cloths, so different types, different styles, and just making sure they're really clean. So I bought 3 new ones today that we're going to be using for the final stages, and then I've got a couple of washed to clean ones ready to go for the clay bar and the early stages. Once we've got that paint looking really good, all those swirls and scratches out, we're just doing a quick glass as well. We'll just be doing a glass clean. We're also going to stick some of the water repellent. This one is just a Rain-X one over all the side windows, windscreen and the rear window. And that's going to help avoid mud and water droplets sticking to the windows on an ongoing basis as well. So what we'll do is we'll go through each step bit by bit. I'll give a few tips along the way, and we'll get this car cleaned up, get it sorted, and we'll do a bit of a comparison before and after. Let's get straight on to the first panel. Okay guys, so just to make our life a little bit easier while we're polishing, we're going to remove a couple of accessories just to make it a little bit easier to access some of the sections. The first one we're going to remove is this bonnet protector here. Obviously we want to get down and get the whole bonnet when we're polishing and cutting it, so we'll remove this. There's only a couple of screws underneath the engine bay there, and also this antenna. It's going to get in the way while we try and do this front section here. There's a small grub screw on the back of this spring base. We'll undo that, take this antenna out. It's going to give us a lot of easy access. So that goes for any type of accessories, including down the back of your car as well. Not that I really have many on this car, but if you do, it's a good idea just to remove those easy to get to parts. And it's going to make your life a lot easier when getting that polisher out. Okay, so like I mentioned, the first step we're going to do to prepare the paint for a cut and polish is to do a clay bar. So today I'm going to be using a product by Bowden's Own. This is just a fine clay bar. You can get different grits sort of thing of clay bar. You can get hard or soft ones. This is just a sort of in the middle to a soft one, and you get a couple of bars in it. So just sort of to show you a comparison about what they look like. So you can see there, just by pulling it out, it literally is just a bar of malleable clay. So it's pretty sticky and soft, but you move it around and just get it into sort of like a flat sort of section, maybe about that big or so. It's obviously going to mold around as you go to use it. And you're going to use that with some sort of lubricant. So I'm going to be using it today with this product by Geon called Clay Lube. Obviously it's designed for this. You can't just push this along your paintwork by itself. It's just going to get stuck. It's not going to do anything. So the reason we do this is just to get out any contaminants that are stuck into the paint that a wash can't get rid of. So that's really good for things like tree sap or other bits and pieces that really get stuck into your paint. This is going to pull it up before we start a cut and polish. So let's get started. With this as well, you're only going to work in small sections. So this is obviously the side of the bonnet. We're just going to work in maybe a 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter square. We'll move around and do the whole bonnet like that. So with this, you're just going to be wanting to spray, rub in a back and forward motion, just in a cross hatch pattern. You need to keep that paint nice and wet to keep that lubrication up, and you'll actually hear the paint change, or the sound of the bar against the paint change as those contaminants come out. So there you go, and just from that, you can see here some of the contaminants in that clay bar. It really does pick up a lot. You can't see those contaminants in the paint from your eye normally, but it definitely does work. I've been washed this car an hour ago, and you can see there how much it's picked up just from that little bit there. So when you're done, grab your microfiber cloth, a nice clean one, and just rub off that sprayed lubricant. Now it really is just as simple as that. Obviously the dirtier your paint work, the more you're going to have to do it, but move around the car and do that the whole way around. Now doing that section there, you'll actually be able to hear the difference in this paint, I've recorded this paint just with the brush of your hand. So if I bring the camera over and get that microphone nice and close, you might be able to hear my hands against this paint. You can hear that resistance, that friction on the paint there. You do that on the section I've just clay lubed, and it feels more like glass. There's nothing there. It's nice and clean and ready to be worked on. So again, we'll keep moving down and we'll do this side of the bonnet. So there you go, there's another section done. That section wasn't too bad, but you can still see some of those contaminants in the center of that clay bar there. And when this clay bar starts to get a little bit dirty like it has now, all you need to do is just fold it over, sort of push it back out again, fold it over again, just keep folding in the dirt. And obviously over time, this clay bar is going to wear out, get dirty, that's when you need to move on to another one. But this little bit of clay bar should do probably a good half of the car before we need to change over to another section. So now it's just a matter of going over the entire car, over all the painted surfaces, and making sure that we clay bar it properly, removing all those contaminants. Now there's two main reasons that we want to remove all those contaminants prior to a cut and polish and protection treatment. The first one is removing all the loose dirt and debris that's embedded into the paint that a normal wash isn't going to be able to remove. You want to do that before the cut and polished to avoid having that dirt come free while you are using a dual action polisher, and then potentially rubbing into more swirl marks with the dirt embedded into the pad of a dual action polisher. Now the second reason you want to do it as well is just to remove any protective coatings that may have been put onto the vehicle prior to this particular treatment. It's just going to bring your car back to a nice basic clear coat with no protective coating and no contaminants in the paint, ready for a cut and polish and the best final result you can get. Okay, so we've got the clay bar done now. Probably took about an hour or so to do the whole car. Went through half a clay bar and half a bottle of clay lube. But again, it's really just down to how you want the finish. The more time you spend on it, the more contaminants you get off the paint, the better the polish result and the better the overall result. So at an hour on this car, we did do it about the same time last year. So if you do it every 12 months or so, you're not going to get a big build-up of contaminants in the paint. It's going to make your life a lot easier every time you do it. So now we're going to move on to the compound, which is also known as a cut stage. So essentially what we're doing here is taking a very, very fine layer off that top layer of clear coat, and it's just taking back the clear coat to sort of even out with some of the swirls and scratches in the paint. Now I fully expect on the Landcruiser behind the camera, we're not going to get rid of all the scratches because some of them are quite deep. They're not down to the paint, but they're definitely deeper than I want to go with a cut. Now something you want to be careful of as well, you don't want to do it too regularly as you are taking a little bit of that clear coat every time you do it. So I try and do it once every 12 months or so, just to keep the car looking good, but not to take off too much. So we've got our dual action polisher here. Now the good thing about this as well, like I said before, it has got its speed settings on a wheel at the back here, but it's also got what's known as a slow start. So when you pull the trigger, the wheel's going to start off slow. So when you have your pad and your material on it, it's not going to flick everywhere. So you'll hear that. So that's another good benefit to have as well with a dual action polisher. So we're going to be using the Geon cut pad. It's one of these red pads here. It just simply velcros it to the dual action polisher. So you want to make sure you get that right in the center there. And then just push that on. So there you go, you have it there. Now another little handy piece to have is just a brush like this. It's only a couple of dollars with some pretty thick bristles there. And that's just going to help free up any of the dirt as you go when that builds up on this pad. Now notice in this pad as well, one thing I do like about the Geon pad is it has a hole in the center, and that's just aimed to keep the heat down in the pad. Obviously as you're going around buffing the car, it's going to be building up heat in the pad, and heat's what destroys these pads and makes them fall apart, and they become less effective the more they deteriorate. So having that hole there, it does make sure that the heat's not too intense there on the pad, and you want to make sure you're tapping the panel as well, making sure you're not building up heat in any particular area of the panel as you go along. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, we're going to be using Meguiar's Ultimate Compound. So far it's one of the best compounds I've found on the sort of novice market, I guess you call it. It's not a professional product as such, you can just get it from your local auto store, but it does a really good job at taking out those surface scratches. So in order to apply this, all you're going to be doing is sticking a few dots onto your pad, and then just pressing them against the panel, trying to spread it out, starting on really low setting on the dual action polisher, mixing that in, and then you can start to turn it up and start to peel back some of that clear coat. Now it's not going to happen like that, it is going to take some time, so don't worry about going too deep straight away, but do definitely keep an eye on how much you are taking off and keep regularly inspecting your panel until you get to a result you want. So you're going to need a nice fresh microfiber towel as well to wipe away some of this compound when it dries up as you go along. So let's go to the front fender and we'll start with our panel and get going. Okay, so let's get that product going to shake up. Then we're going to be wanting to put a few dots onto the pad itself. And what I do is just pat that onto the paint just to spread it out a little bit. It's going to be working in small sections at a time, just regularly checking the heat of the panel, making sure it's not burning up. So starting on slow speed to mix that in. So the cut and compound section of this detail is probably going to be the most labor intensive part of this process. So while applying the product, you're going to be using a medium to firm pressure against the pad onto the vehicle, and you're going to be wanting to regularly inspect the panel to make sure it's not heating up too much, and also to make sure you're getting rid of all those surface scratches. Now make sure when you're using a dual action polisher that you keep the polisher moving and don't sit still in one particular location for too long, as that will heat the panel up and cause some burning and some marring in the paint, which will be difficult to repair. Further, when moving a dual action polisher around, it is a good idea to do overlapping passes just to make sure you don't miss any sections and you get a nice even coverage of that pad onto that panel that you're working on. Now working in a small section is going to be ideal, just so you can monitor the area that you're working on, making sure it's not getting too hot, but also being able to dry off that compound agent, making sure it doesn't dry onto the paint. Now you're going to want to work in small sections, just making sure that you cover evenly that entire area, make sure the panel doesn't get too hot and that you're getting rid of all those scratches. Now because you are using a cut pad, you can see there that it does take away that top layer of that clear coat and any dirt and embedded marks within the paint. During this process, you will notice that the pad will clog up with the product that you're using. So it's a good idea just to use that brush that I showed at the start of the video, just to brush against the pad, and that will remove all that dry product and allow it to work more efficiently. Okay guys, so it's been a couple of hours. We finally managed to get all of that cut and compound done on the car. So some of those scratches were fairly deep and some of them are still in the paint. There's not much we can do about the deeper ones. If we kept going for a few hours, we might have got rid of all of them, but in the end, this is a four-wheel drive and it still gets used off-road, and it's just gonna get more scratches and pinstripes as time goes on. So there's no point in doing it every year to be perfect, otherwise we're gonna go through that clear coat pretty quickly. So we're going to move on to the next step now, which is the polish stage. This won't take nearly as long. You just want to buff the polish over the panels. You don't need to necessarily buff out the scratches as such as that was done in the cut and compound. This here is just going to give the paint an extra shine, and also that look of the extra deep look in the pearl white colour that we've got on this Landcruiser. So we're going to be using the Meguiar's Ultimate Polish for this step, and we're going to use that along with the Geon polish pad as well, which will just be on the dual action polisher. So it's very much the same as doing the cut and compound in terms of the application. We're just going to get a brand new fresh microfiber cloth, and we'll use that to buff it off as we go. We don't want that polish drying on the paint as we go along, and then we're up to the finish stage. So we'll go ahead, get this done, and then we'll move on. Now you will notice with the polish and the polish pad, which is a finer pad material, that it will glide across the paint a little easier. It won't build up the heat quite as much, and you don't require such a firm pressure. You're looking at a light to medium pressure placed on that dual action polisher against the panel. So this process is very similar to that of the cut and compound, using those overlapping passes and making sure that you get the entire panel with a nice even coverage. Now, in order to inspect the swells and scratches on the vehicle, it does very much come down to the lighting that you've got. Now, the best lighting you can get for a white car like this is between 3,500 and 5,000 Kelvin, which is a lighting temperature measurement. And for darker cars, it can be between 5,000 and 6,500 Kelvin. This will really make a big difference in being able to see those swells and scratches, and it's going to make a big difference in the long run to the final result. So I'm using a pair of Arlic lights that I've got from Bunnings. They're an LED light, and they're within that sort of 5,000 Kelvin range, and it provides a really good light in order to detect those scratches. But don't be surprised if you look at your car through that light, it may look worse than you initially thought. Okay, so we've come up to the tail light section of the vehicle, and there's nothing stopping you using the polish and the dual action polisher on the plastic itself. You're just going to keep in mind that the material of the plastic is a lot softer than that of the metal and the clear coat that you're polishing on the car, so it's not going to take nearly as much to get this to look good. So instead of using a cut, we're just going straight to a polish, and we're just going to do the sections that we need to do. The rear of the tail light's been done last year and it's still fine. The side, though, however, has been hit by a few trees and just some pinstripes and whatnot across the side of it here. So we're going to give this side here a light polish. I'll zoom the camera in and see if I can do it as we go, but you'll see it really doesn't take much to get this light looking really good. So just be cautious when doing plastics like this. It is very important to monitor the heat of the material that you're working on, and keeping in mind that plastics are very much softer than that of the metal, and it will not take much to burn this plastic and cause some damage to that tail light. Plastics like this tail light do not take much to repair and do come up really well when used with a light pressure and just a light once over polish. You can see just by doing that minute or so of polishing there, how well the side of that tail light's turned up. When we get to the coating stage, we can coat this plastic as well, make sure it's nice and protected for trips to come. So there we have it, the polishing is now complete. So you probably saw from the end of that footage there, they had to resort to hand polishing for the bonnet, which was the last panel I had on the car. And that's because this pad here just wore out over the course of doing the entire car. So you can see here the heat's got to it and it's broken away from the backing pad. So that does happen. Obviously this is quite a large car and it was a used pad before we started. They're only about $20 per pad, but you have to expect you're probably going to go through one pad per vehicle, or you're not going to get much more if you do start another vehicle with it. So you do want to keep the heat down on them, but eventually it is going to end up like that. And then it's just not usable. If you try and use it like that, that backing pad's going to end up hitting the paint and you're going to put scratches on it and you're back to square one. So resorted to hand polishing there at the end last panel. So now that we've got that polishing done, that really has reduced the contrast between those remaining scratches in the paint and the good stuff. So we've got a couple of things to do before we finish up. So the first one is we're going to go over all the glass now and all these black trimmings where there's a bit of overspray flick of that material from the polish and the compound. And also want to clean up these windows ready for some Rain-X application as well. Once we've done that, we can then go over all the paint with our prep spray on, which is going to take away all the oils and contaminants left behind by the compound and the polish, and be ready for our protective coating. So let's start with the glass and the trimmings, and we'll get that done. So it is inevitable when using the polish and the cutting compounds that you will get some overspray and some dust from those pads onto the windows and the trimmings. Just using a good quality ammonia-free glass cleaner will remove those oils from the windows and give it a really good clean surface ready for our water repellent coating. Okay, so before we put the final protective coating onto the paintwork, the last thing I'm going to do is just do a bit of a window protection, or at least a glass water repellent anyway. So I'm going to use this product by Rain-X. It's just a water repellent. And what it does, it just helps the water bead off the windows when it does rain, and it just assists in not only visibility, but also if you do go forward driving and get some dirt on there, it's not going to stick to your windows as much, which means you're still going to be able to see out. Very handy as well for the windscreen. It just assists the windscreen wipers in a nice smooth action, plus again increasing visibility. So it's really easy to put on. Just put a bit onto, I'm going to use a paper towel, wipe it into the window, let it dry to a haze, and then buff off with a microfiber cloth. So we'll do that on all the windows around the vehicle. Now I should say as well, this product is best applied to the windows when they are very clean, so make sure that you do have a really nice clean surface to apply it to. So let that sit there for a second and we'll do the others. So now it's dried up just for 30 seconds or a minute or so. Grab just a microfiber towel. Now I have just put a very light coating of glass cleaner on here. It does help get this haze off, but it keeps the Rain-X on the window, and just simply buff off that excess. Now one very clean window that's going to repel water really well during the rain. So there you go, now you're going to want to repeat that on the back windscreen, the front windscreen, and all down the other side of the vehicle. So we are almost done now, guys. There's only 2 more steps to go to make this car 100% detailed and looking really good. So the first one is using Geon Prep. So this is the product I talked about at the start of the video. This is just a product to remove all the oils and contaminants from the paintwork that's left behind by the polish and the compound products that we used earlier to polish the vehicle. So they do leave like an oily residue behind, and what that does, that makes it difficult for any sort of protective coating or finish that you put on the vehicle to stick and bond with that clear coat. So we use this on all the metal surfaces or any surface that we plan on using that protective coating on, just to remove all that residue. We'll have a really nice clear coat, bare clear coat for that to bond onto. So we'll go ahead, get this whole vehicle cleaned up with this. So again, using another fresh microfiber towel for this, just so we don't introduce any other chemicals or residue to the paint. Okay, so once you're happy the car has been totally cleaned and all that paintwork is nice and fresh, you will notice that prep product does sort of add a bit more tension to the paint. You still get that nice glassy finish. There's a little bit more tension there because the oil and compound residue isn't sort of providing that lubrication on the surface there. So that's what you want. You want a nice, smooth, a little bit sticky surface, and that is your clear coat ready to protect it with the coating. So let's grab our coating and we'll start getting ready to apply it. Okay guys, so here we are up to the fun stage now, the final step to make this car look really, really good. So today we're going to be using just a ceramic spray coating. So it's not like a full ceramic coating you'd get like from a professional detailer, but it's definitely a nice coat over the vehicle that's a little bit stronger than a wax, a little bit more chemical resistant, going to last a bit longer and a bit tougher, that we put onto the paint, and it's just going to protect it and give it a really nice, deep, glossy shine. So the one we're using today is going to be the Mother's CMX ceramic coating. And it's just a spray-on coating, so it is silicon and titanium dioxide. So the bottle really does need a good shake up before you start. And we just apply it by spraying directly onto the paintwork you want to apply it to, rubbing it in. I've just got a microfiber applicator pad here. You just want to rub it in sort of like a cross hatch pattern, just to make sure you don't miss any spots. Now it says there to leave it for a few minutes to let it bond to the surface, and then you want to come along with a clean microfiber towel and buff it off, making sure it doesn't dry too much onto the paint. The good thing about this product is you can, what they refer to as stack it, which means you can wait 24 hours for that surface to complete this material to completely bond with the surface of the vehicle, and then you can apply another coat to give it a little bit of extra strength and longevity. So what we're going to do now, just go around the car and apply this to all the paint surfaces. We're also going to apply it to things like the tail lights and the headlights. You really can apply it to anything, just making sure it's a nice clean surface. And obviously this is where all that work you've put in to compounding and polishing it comes into effect. Once you've sealed it in, it's gonna be a lot harder to fix those scratches up at a later point. So make sure you do put that effort in at the start, and let's get to sealing up the car. So we've done the side of the car now, it's time to come along and buff off that drying residue. So now it's just a matter of going around the entire vehicle and applying the ceramic coating to all the panels. So it's very important to apply the ceramic coating in a very even manner, which is why it's very helpful and important to apply it in a cross-hatch application, just to ensure you don't miss any areas and that is nice and even in its application. It's also very important to ensure using a nice, fresh and very clean microfiber towel when buffing it off. If there is any dirt or contaminants in that towel, you do run the risk of re-adding those swells and scratches which just work so hard to remove. And also you don't want to be using a microfiber towel that you used with the polish or the cutting compound, as it will have those oils and contaminants in it, which could potentially mix with the ceramic coating and alter and affect the way in which it dries onto the vehicle and potentially reduce its efficiency and its longevity. And there we have it. That ceramic spray coating is on and it feels awesome. It is glossy as it's come up really nicely. It's got back that smooth feel to it again. And look, overall it's looking really, really good. So we're gonna let it cure for, well, say 12 to 18 hours. Unfortunately, the sun has gone down today, so it's gonna be hard to show you some final results today, but we're gonna get back out tomorrow in the sun and get the camera out and show you how good this thing has turned up. But it really has been worth the effort. It has been a whole day today. A lot of time spent on that compound, that cutting stage. We're trying to get some of those swells and scratches out, and we did get most of them out. And I tell you what, at the end of the day now, all that hard work has really paid off. We've got one awesome looking car here that we know now is protected for our next trip. Now, one interesting little thing as well with that ceramic coating, because it does have silicon dioxide in it, which is a key ingredient of sand, also glass, it does try and cure and leave a hard coating on top of that paint that we do have here, and you can actually see some of the little grains of silicon dioxide dry up on the sections where you don't wipe it down. So if you get a little bit of overspray on a window, you might see them at the bottom sill of a window. You can see a little bit on this black bull bar just built up on the bottom, and so you know that the silicon dioxide is coming out of the bottle and it really is drying up and trying to put a nice hard coating around that clear coat of your vehicle. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. results speak for themselves. How good has this car turned out? So look, overall, it's taken a long time. It took the whole of yesterday, and obviously had to leave the car overnight to cure with that hybrid ceramic spray coating on, but it has turned out so well. It's super smooth, super glossy. The depth in that color is unbelievable, and it's all ready to go for its next trip. But it means it's going to be also a lot easier to clean for the next few months while it's got this protective coating on. So this just goes to show, guys, you can do this in your own garage. Granted, it's a bit of time, and there are a few things you've got to buy, but some of those things are a one-off, and once you've got them, you've got them. So most of the products I use today, I only used a small amount. Everything apart from the clay lubrication and the clay bar itself is going to last a lot of these washes, and it's going to do the detailing many times. So I hope you learned something from the video today. I hope it's showing you that you can do this yourself in your own backyard. And look, like I said in my cleaning video, these are just four-wheel drives. They're designed exactly for that. They're going to get dirty, they're going to get scratched, and they're going to get that little bit damaged in relation to their paint. But when we can, why not keep it the best we can, making it look really good and protecting it for all those future trips. So one thing I should mention, guys, there are many different options in terms of coating your car for long term, short term, and what I would call the mid term, which is what we've done here with that spray ceramic coating. So I'll put a link in a video to another channel of someone else who explains very well the different pros and cons for different things we can do to protect our four-wheel drive when we're off the beaten track. But in terms of day-to-day driving, and in terms of what I prefer, this just suits me perfectly, and it seems to have lasted the test of time so far. So I hope today's video has encouraged you to try this at home yourself on your own car, whether it be a four-wheel drive or not. It's still applicable to all sorts of vehicles. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to most of the products I use in this video in the description below. So if there's anything that interests you in relation to what I did today, you can go down there and buy those products for yourself so you can get the same sort of results. So if you have any questions in relation to what I've done today, make sure to leave a comment in the section below or hit us up on Facebook or Instagram at Exploring Oz, and let's just have a look at this vehicle one more time. We'll see you in the next video, guys. Cheers.